With the arrival of February, the great American emperor readied the commercial cannons and opened fired. He announced a huge tariff of 25% against all products, except energy, from his two neighbors, Mexico and Canada, and 10% against everything coming from China. This measure caused a political, financial, and corporate earthquake. Canada responded. Mexico announced that it would also do so. China did so. Business associations came out in force, denouncing the measure, and the stock markets turned red. To give you an idea, Ernst & Young's estimates indicate that with this rift, US economic growth would plummet by half in 2025 and lose 2 points in 2026. This would be a real disaster.
I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. Tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for US security.
But in the end, at the very last moment, as Wall Street was clothed in deep red and everything seemed poised for disaster, the guns backed off.
Le planteé siempre que queríamos que pusiera en pausa las tarifas desde el primer momento, los aranceles. Entonces, en este caso llegamos a ese acuerdo.
Proposed tariffs will be paused for at least 30 days while we work together.
A few hours before the tariffs announced by Donald Trump were to ultimately come into effect, the trade offensive was suddenly aborted, at least for now. After a lot of calls and pressure of all kinds, the tariffs were suspended for 30 days. And the US president had clearly stated himself that the tariffs were a one-way street, that they were good for the national economy, that they were fair for the mistreatment received by its two neighbors, and that nothing would make him change his mind. And when we say nothing, we mean nothing. But if you like, hear it from the man himself.
Mr. President, is there anything China, Canada, and Mexico can do tonight to forestall your implementation of tariffs tomorrow?
No, nothing. Not right now, no.
Not a negotiating tool?
No, it's not. No, it's a pure economic. We have big deficits with...
Is there a concession you're looking for, sir?
No, we're not looking for a concession. And we'll just see what happens. We'll see what happens.
And yet, tariffs have been paused. And so the question is, why? What prompted this game changer? Has Donald Trump once again gotten his way, as his supporters claim? Were the tariffs nothing more than a measure to exert pressure? Has the Make America Great Again reasoning triumphed once again? What on earth have Canada and Mexico given in on? Well, this time, the story seems to have been very different from what we might think at first glance. This may have been the new President of the United States of America's first shot in the foot. And why do I say this? Well, we're about to tell you, so let's get started.
As President John F. Kennedy said many years ago, geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies. That rang true for many decades prior to President Kennedy's time in office, and in the decades since. From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you.
VisualPolitik community, the President of the United States has been very clear in recent months. Tariffs are the backbone of his economic vision, the holy grail for America's industrial and economic rebirth, necessary for achieving the golden age.
The next short period of time than anybody ever envisioned before, because the incentive is going to be there, because they have no tariff whatsoever. In fact, they have help from us if they build their plant in America. And we're going to look at pharmaceuticals, drugs. We're going to look at chips, semiconductors, and we're going to look at steel and some other industries, and you're going to see things happening.
However, when the tariffs finally seemed a done deal, a media and corporate earthquake occurred. Suddenly, all kinds of economists, analysts, business associations, chambers of commerce, companies, and think tanks went ballistic. And no, we're not talking about entrepreneurs possessed by a woke virus or anything like that.
Texas exported over $491 billion in goods. Mexico and Canada accounted for over half. Tariffs threaten this success. Instead of disrupting trade, we should double down on United States-Mexico-Canada agreement benefits. Trump tariffs would shrink economic output by 0.4% and increase taxes by $1.1 trillion between 2025 and 2034, amounting to an average tax increase of more than $800 per U.S. household in 2025.
It was a tsunami that, honestly, I don't think they could have seen coming. Suddenly, virtually everyone was against it. Even Republican senators and congressmen began to show their rejection and sign letters asking the White House not to go any further on this issue. But Trump, nevertheless, appeared to be stubborn, even though he eventually had to acknowledge that the measure would cause harm in the United States.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country. Not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair.
And yet, in the end, the tariffs have been postponed. Supposedly, according to Make America Great Again diehards, because the president has gotten his way and won big concessions from Mexico and Canada, which in the end had to bend the knee. You know, another America First success. So why did I tell you earlier that we think this was the first time Donald Trump may have shot himself in the foot? Well, let's start, if you like, with the land of the Aztecs, which was the first to announce the agreement with the White House. In this case, President Sheinbaum announced the agreement with Trump after having a long conversation with the US president about security on the southern border.
Poder poner más guardias nacionales en la frontera norte para proteger la frontera y evitar el tráfico de drogas y en particular el tráfico de fentanilo de México hacia Estados Unidos. Le planteé siempre que queríamos que pusiera en pausa las tarifas desde el primer momento, los aranceles. Entonces, en este caso llegamos a ese acuerdo.
The Mexican government has pledged to deploy 10,000 National Guard troops to the border to stem the flow of fentanyl into the United States. And of course, the president also pledged to collaborate more with Washington to strengthen control of the border between the two countries. Sounds like a great success for Trump, doesn't it? Well, let's not go so fast, because in this case, the Mexican government's offer has been to play the same broken record that they've already used a lot of times. You don't believe me? Well, look at what happens every time there's a crisis between Mexico and Washington. The response is almost always the same. Sometimes the offer is even bigger. This is news from 2019. It happened during Donald Trump's first term.
Mexico sends 15,000 troops to border in unusual move to ward off U.S. trade tariffs. Trump has said he will impose initial tariffs of 5% on all Mexican goods if the migrant flow is not curbed.
And this other one is from 2021, in this case when Joe Biden was in the White House.
Joe Biden orders immigration crackdown. Mexico sends 10,000 troops to patrol borders.
Exactly, the same announcement and the same commitment. It's basically the Joker that Mexico always plays. Nothing new to see here. Something like, guys, we have a call with Washington, so you know what to do. Let the gringos see you at the border for a few days, make them happy, and then come back. But that's not all. The last few hours have been so busy that we've seen things like this.
The Mexican drug trafficking organizations have an intolerable alliance with the government of Mexico. The government of Mexico has afforded safe havens for the cartels to engage in the manufacturing and transportation of dangerous narcotics.
See what this means? On February 2nd, the White House itself directly accused the Mexican government of being allied with the cartels and of being part of the drug trafficking problem that is cursing America. And just 24 hours later, Trump makes a deal with that government, saying how serious they are without Mexico really offering anything new or anything special. I don't know, what can I say? Success. What is called success? I personally don't see it anywhere. Besides, if Trump really wanted Mexico to deploy those 10,000 soldiers again, 5,000 less than in 2019, why make this public mess? Why not do things government to government without having to provoke a financial, economic, and political earthquake? But VisualPolitik community, if Mexico already sounds odd, Canada's response was simply grotesque. Canada is a good ally of the United States. It's a rich, developed country with a relatively secure border. In fact, there are more problems with gun and gang trafficking going from the United States to Canada than the other way around. Not only that, but Canadians devour American-made products. So not only is the trade deficit small, but if we exclude the cheap oil that Canadians sell in bulk to Uncle Sam, and with which American companies do a huge business, it turns out that the country that has a trade deficit is Canada, and not the United States. Well, despite everything Trump has not tired of repeating things like this.
We don't need them to make our cars. We don't need them to give us lumber.
We don't need them for agricultural products because we have all the agriculture we need.
And not only that, but Trump has not stopped repeating that what he wants is to annex Canada as the 51st state of the Union, which of course has unleashed a huge patriotic wave in this country. Be that as it may, in Ottawa, they responded forcefully. Well, so did Trudeau, and so did the opposition parties and the governments of all the provinces. This time, they weren't going to let Trump walk all over them. So they brought out their own artillery.
Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion. Better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. Canada has critical minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need.
And not only that, they also announced a joint strategy with Mexico and began negotiating with the European Union to create something like a common front of those blackmailed by Trump. This time, Justin Trudeau didn't shy away. He didn't bow his head, even though he was on his way out. No, this time, he pulled out all his political talent, united the country, and delivered one of the most memorable speeches of recent years, perhaps even of this century. It was the perfect speech at the perfect time. Basically, Canadians were not going to give up, despite Trump's tariffs dooming them to suffer a harsh economic crisis. No, this time, they would not give up. Quite the contrary, they unleashed a huge political and media pressure campaign against the White House.
And now is also the time to choose Canada. There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon, or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to stay here in Canada.
And oh, surprise, surprise, things started to turn around, until it was announced that tariffs on this country were also suspended for 30 days. The question is, what did the Canadian government offer Trump? Well, practically nothing, or rather, nothing new. Yes, Trudeau announced the deployment on the border of 10,000 agents, a lot of investments in security, declaring the cartels as terrorist groups, and appointing a high-ranking official to be responsible for the fight against fentanyl trafficking. The problem? Well, most of these measures were nothing new. The plan is the same one that had already been in place since the end of 2024. Trudeau simply did not budge from his initial position.
The $1.3 billion border plan had already been announced by Canada in December of 2024. It's a plan that was already in place and has nothing to do with tariffs. Canada yielded virtually nothing, and in the end, the White House backed down based on a plan that already existed before they launched their offensive.
Practically, the only thing Trump has achieved is for Canada to declare the Mexican cartels as terrorist groups. The problem? Well, on the one hand, this will have hardly any consequences. And on the other hand, these are the same cartels that the White House says are linked to a government with which Trump has now made a deal. Crazy. Now, many staunch supporters of Make America Great Again are saying things like this. Finally, the lefties of Mexico and Canada have learned their lesson. They have groveled at our feet and given up everything to beg for mercy. No one will ever again make a mockery of the mighty United States of America. The reality, as you can see, is totally different. This time, Trudeau responded to Trump by following what is known as the madman theory. That is, do what no one expects. To ignore the possible consequences and respond with all the artillery. This caused many companies in the United States, starting with the powerful automobile and oil industries, to panic, which naturally multiplied the pressure against the White House. Of course, for now, the 1-month suspension has been agreed, and during these 30 days, it is almost certain that Trump will try to achieve new concessions. Now, here I would like to be clear. With the threat of trade war against Canada and Mexico, Trump unleashed hysteria, stressed many businesses, has damaged the reputation and brand of the United States, and above all, has caused Canada to come to a conclusion. They have to get their act together to reduce their dependence on the United States. For example, by promoting the sale of oil and gas to the rest of the world, which means building a lot of new infrastructure that will see it competing directly with the United States. VisualPolitik community, this has been a bad move for Americans. And do you know what? The White House seems to have taken notice. This time, from bragging about their accomplishments, they quickly sought to change the narrative. How? Well, by suddenly launching messages like this one.
So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them
with their rare earth and other things.
That is, Ukraine giving the United States access to its rare earths in exchange for financing, although we'll talk about this another day because a large part of those deposits they're talking about happen to be in territories disputed with Russia. Be that as it may, the point is that yesterday, Trump jumped at this.
Trump orders the creation of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund.
And also, with this, a fund to buy shares of companies. We'll be talking about it soon on VisualPolitik. The point is that all of a sudden, the White House started launching itself into everything seemingly with one goal in mind: to dodge the tariff issue and change the public narrative. And I don't know, that's not usually an indicator of triumph, is it? VisualPolitik community, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 30 days. Whether the threat of trade war with Canada and Mexico will return, or whether it's now the European Union's turn. We don't know, but honestly, everything points to this being Donald Trump's first defeat since he's arrived in the Oval Office. To be sure, the ones that do remain for now are the 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. But this is a relatively small tariff with a country that has been reducing its direct ties with the United States for years. So the truth, I think in Beijing, however much they appear to protest, they would gladly opt to leave things as they are in exchange for this tariff, which, at least for now, is a far cry from what Trump promised on the campaign trail. But having reached this point, the questions are now for you. What did you think of this abrupt change of position? What do you think will happen in 30 days? Will the European Union be Trump's next target? Leave us your opinions below in the comments and let's start a debate. And very important, if you liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe to VisualPolitik if you have not already done so. Thanks for being there. All the best. See you next time.